magandang hapon, umaga, kung anong oras niyo man pinapanood yung or nakikinig sa podcast na to. Hi everybody, good afternoon. I actually have the same partner for today.
Yes, hello everyone. It's my second time on the podcast.
Yes.
Same partner, same vibes.
Same vibes. And you know what? It's fun because last podcast, Rafi, you were there. We talked about what did we talk about last time? We talked about relationships, right?
Yeah, just to enlighten the viewers that are hopping in on the third episode and watch the previous episodes, just to give you insight, give you a little throwback with our previous episode. We actually talked about relationships. And one thing that really struck me from the previous episode is how you can communicate effectively, how you can build the foundation in communicating effectively, and how you can identify your role as a friend in supporting your friends. And what about you, Zandy? What's your takeaway from the previous episode?
For me naman, I really remembered the concept of boundaries, and hitting that balance with relationships, not just with others, but also with the self. And then we also had a lot of tips and tricks on how to keep good relationships going throughout the pandemic. So, Rafi, you look very comfy today.
Yeah, we're still very cozy,
we're
very
still
comfy,
very cozy.
even from the previous episode. And for those who haven't tuned into the previous episode, for anyone who might need a little relationship, a little friendship advice, you can tune in from the previous episode. And during the first episode, a little mental health talk. So we can move on and, just tune in. Thank you for coming in, watching our podcast.
And thank you for staying with us. But for those of you kung na ito yung unang pinili na pakinggan na podcast, papahalaman mo sa rin namin, hi, ako si Zanella Denise, aka Zandy.
At ako naman si Jose Rafael, aka Rafi.
At ito ang Pahinging Pahinga, isang serye ng mental health video podcast na nagnanais makatulong sa mga nakaranas ng mental stress ngayong pandemya. Muli, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all our listeners.
At ang pamagat naman ng episode natin ngayon, episode 3, ay Count on Me. Like 1, 2, 3. Joke lang. Count on me, providing peer support to those experiencing mental health issues. And just to connect from the previous episode, previously we talked about relationships, friendly relationships, all kinds of relationships. And now we can connect that to our current episode. Papag-usapan namin ngayon ang peer support, how to support our friends, those who have mental health issues, and so on.
Yes, at dahil nga sa kasalukuyang krisis, pangkalusugan at pangkabuhayan because of the pandemic, marami sa ating mga kakilala ang nakakaranas ng matinding stress and strain mentally and physically as well. Kaya naman tatalakayin ng ating tagapagsalita ngayon ang mga dapat sabihin at gawin upang makapagbigay tayo ng angkop na suporta sa isa't isa.
At ang episode naman na ito ay nahahandog ng Power Up! Team 6, isang inisyatibo ng Rise for Education UP Diliman. This episode is co-presented by Sinagdiwa Volunteers for Mental Health Awareness, and Change Makers Philippines.
And it was created in cooperation with We Mind PH, Alliance of Public Health Advocates, City of Mandaluyong Science High School Supreme Student Government, the Philippine School, Dubai Senior High School Student Council, Yugto Philippines, Likas Bayan Organization Incorporated, and Angkla PH.
And of course, we cannot forget a special thanks to Aksyon ng Kabataan Organisasyon.
And of course, more information about this event, Kaakibat na layunin naming matugunan ang mga suliraning may kinalaman sa mental health. Kabilang sa mga benepisyaryo ng podcast na ito ay ang Youth for Mental Health Coalition. Ang Youth for Mental Health Coalition ay samahan ng mga organisasyong estudyante at kabataan na naghahangad na paunlarin ang kamalayan ng bansa sa mga isyong pang mental health. Ang unang SEC or SEC-registered na non-profit organizasyong pang mental health sa Pilipinas, malawak ang sakop ng kanilang nagawa laban sa krisis at stigma ng mental health, kagaya ng tumulong sila sa pagtitipon ng suporta at paglikha mismo ng Philippine Mental Health Act.
At para naman makatulong sa kanilang mga programa tulad ng mga educational discussions, forums, at pag-institutionalize ng usapin sa mental health sa lipunan, maaaring magbigay ng donasyon sa GCash account ni Hazel Grace Romero sa numerong 0995-465-6448 o di kaya sa kanyang BPI account na may numerong 981-941-3131. Tatanggap na kami ng donasyon hanggang sa ikalawa ng Mayo or May 2, 2021. Ang mga numerong nabanggit ay makikita sa inyong mga screen.
Yan. So all the information to help to assist us and to further the idea and this podcast to go further is on your screens. So don't forget about that, guys. But Rafi, you know what? I'm very excited to start this podcast, the meaty part of this podcast, because ang tagapagsalita natin ngayon ay isang licensed professional teacher, rehistradong psychometrician, guro sa pampublikong paaralan at ang national advisor ng We Mind PH.
Our guest for today is Miss Vea Rica Madlang Sakay is a public school teacher by profession and has been a mental health advocate since 2013. She graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Psychology from Bulacan State University in 2014, and she would go on to earn continuing professional teacher education units from the same university in 2017. Si Ate Vea talaga always on the pursuit of knowledge and education. She is currently taking up her Master of Science degree in Psychology at La Consolacion University, Philippines.
Yes, both a licensed professional teacher and a registered psychometrician, Ms. Madlang Sakay has dedicated her knowledge and skills to helping different mental health initiatives throughout the country. She was a former psychological first aider at Lingap Isip Bulacan and a former facilitator at both the Psychological Association of the Philippines and Ateneo de Manila University's Katatagan Online. Currently, she serves as a Luzon Committee member of the Youth for Mental Health Coalition and is the national advisor for We Mind PH.
Without further ado, I don't think we want to keep our listeners, our viewers waiting. Welcome! Ipanikikilala namin si Miss Vea Rica Madlang Sakay.
Welcome! Hello po! Thank you so
Hi,
much.
hello everyone. Zandy and Rafi, thank you so much for that warm welcome. Magandang umaga, magandang hapon, magandang gabi, kung anong oras man kayo nakikinig ngayong sa podcast, di ba? Welcome! Di ba? I love the energy. Let's keep this going.
Yes. Nakatulong nga talaga ang mga caffeine fix natin. If you guys are listening to this without having anything to up your energy right now, hopefully we can help you guys with that.
Yes, we can give you guys a boost to your mental, boost to your emotional, and of course a boost to your physical. I don't know how, but somehow we're gonna be able to do that. And before we continue, Miss Vea, Ate Vea, may gusto ka bang sabihin sa mga listeners natin bago tayo magsimula?
For me, gusto ko lang i-highlight yung mental health. Lalo ngayon, nabibigyan na siya ng attention na kinakailangan niya this pandemic. Ngayon siya na-cherish, ngayon siya na-appreciate. And we'd like to continue kaming mga advocates, lalo na yung mga bago ngayon, mga youth advocates. You are very welcome, of course, to help us with this advocacy. And of course, ako ang inyong millennial tita or ate, what can you call? It's okay. Tita Bay, Ate Bay, back to you, Zandy and Rafi.
Ayan, si ate ang ating Ate Vey. But again, we can call her also Tita. This is a very nice relationship that we're forming. But of course, I think because this is the meaty part of our podcast, we also, speaking of relationships that we've built, again, just connecting to our previous episode, very important po yung suporta ng mga tao sa paligid natin. So I think before we ask how we're supposed to do this, it's important to know why we're doing this. So how does peer support help people with mental health issues?
Hi! So, first of all, gusto ko lang i-rephrase yung term natin. Kasi ang nabanggit ninyo, it's peer support. So, to be more broad, to be more specific, to be more precise as well, let's have this as social support. Kasi pwedeng you can have that support di lang basta sa peers mo, but from some certain strangers, from online friends, or what, mga newfound friends mo, di ba? So let's term it as social support. So unang-una, they can help us stabilizers or stabilizers. What do you call that? Are you familiar with that term? Usually, di ba, we can have that sa mga camera, di ba, yung mga photographers, gumagamit sila ng stabilizers. And usually, kapag meron kang feeling mo you're not mentally healthy, feeling mo wala ka sa ground. So balikan mo yung song ni Rose On the Ground, 'di ba? So they can help us stabilize, 'di ba? So that's the first one kapag meron kang social support. Then the next one is nagkakaroon tayo ng improved sense of belongingness and security. If you're familiar with Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, nandun yung needs natin to be loved and magkaroon tayo ng security. Di ba, at the end of the day, we want to love and be loved. So that's the second one. And the third one, the social support or the peer support can help us in rational thinking. What do we mean by rational thinking? When we say rational thinking, this is having some sort of fair and sound judgment when we do decision makings. Um, they also support us in giving the pros and cons of each decisions that we make as well. 'Di ba? Kasi if you're not that mentally healthy, you are biased as well as feeling mo hindi tama yung mga naririnig mo, nakaka-affect sa'yo, nag-overthink ka. So they can also help with us sa rational thinking. And the fourth one rather, they remind us of our accountabilities in life. So what are our accountabilities in life? So this is the reason of our existence. Like, the answer to the question, para kanino ka bumabangon? Why do you keep on going? What do you look forward in every morning that you wake up? So those are the four main importance of having a peer support or social support. The first one, sila yung parang stabilizers natin. The second one, we can have an improved sense of belongingness and security. The third one, they can help in rational thinking. And the fourth one, they remind us of our accountabilities in life.
I really like that. I really like the summary in the end po, Ate Bea. And I really like how it's the first question pa lang, ang dami ko na natuto, di ba? And I liked how you termed the support as social support, not peer support, because we can be more inclusive in the way that we receive support. And now that we've defined what peer support is or social support, how can we tell or paano natin malalaman if our friends or someone we know is undergoing a lot of mental stress and is in need of this kind of support?
Actually, I have here a long list. So, pinili ko na lang dito yung mga usual na pwede nating ma-observe. If you'd like to have note something or ball pen because sometimes it really manifests to other people. So the first one, mark personality change. So are you familiar with the personality? When we say personality, ito yung kumbaga, this is your trademark, di ba? This is the set of traits. From nung bata ka pa, ito ka na talaga. Like for example, you were an extrovert, tas biglang naging introvert ka all of a sudden. So that's a personality change. Like for example, you tend to be so stubborn sa siblings mo, tas biglang sobrang mapagbigay ka na. Yung meron kang mga set of traits na unique para sa'yo, and then yun na talaga yung pagkakilala sa'yo ng relatives and friends mo, biglang nagkaroon ka ng change. So that's one. Alright? The second one is changes in sleeping and eating patterns. So, di ba may mga narinig tayong terms na stress eating? It's either you overeat or you have the restrictive type. Bigla ka na lang magka-crash diet, di ba? Bigla ka na lang naisipan mong ayaw mo na kumain, mag-once a day ka na lang, 1 meal a day na lang, di ba? As well as sleeping patterns. It's either mag-oversleep ka or magkaroon ka na ma-develop mo yung insomnia. Like for example, 2 to 3 hours sa sleep lang, sa sobrang dami ng stressors mo, nagkakaroon ka ng sudden changes sa sleeping or eating patterns mo. So that's the second one. So the third one is confused thinking or strange ideas. So papasok ulit dito si rational thinking. Nasaan na yung rational thinking mo? Reasonable pa ba yung mga iniisip mo? Diba? Is it feasible pa ba yung mga gusto mong gawing activities na nasa bahay ka lang? Diba? We are in a pandemic. Dapat nasa bahay lang tayo. Feasible pa ba yung mga gusto mong gawing na curricular activities outside your schoolwork, diba? Or your work schedule, diba? And of course, the fourth one, prolonged sadness or highs and lows. So we are talking about here extremes. Sometimes you feel so extremely happy to the point na parang gusto mo na lang i-check out lahat na nasa Shopee mo. Diba? Parang ang saya-saya. Kahit wala akong pera, sige. bilhin ko tong colorette, di ba? Yung bundle, even though hindi siya naka-sale, okay lang. Kahit wala akong free voucher, free shipping voucher. Sobrang saya mo, di ba? And of course, yung extreme lows naman. Ito naman yung talagang, ano yung term ng mga millennials ngayon natin? Sad boy, sad girl, di ba? Yung sobrang emotional. Yung parang, ayoko na. Tapos, magse-selfie ka, may tulong luha dito. Di ba? Parang hanggang TikTok, mag-upload ka ng video sa For You page na sobrang na-hurt ka from your previous relationship, di ba? Yun yung extreme highs and lows natin. So, yun yung other indicators as well. The next one is substance abuse. So, substance ito, madami naman to. Hindi lang to basta illegal drugs. So, parang ito kasi yung parang escape mechanism nila or defense mechanism rather ng people kapag parang hindi sila mentally healthy. Like for example, alcohol or nag-smoke sila, nagiging chain smoker ka na, dati pa soju-soju ka lang, ngayon matapang ka na, nagba-black label ka na, di ba? Nag-umpisa ka lang sa mga samgyupsalan na soju ka lang, tapos dahil parang feeling mo sobrang na-down ka, tara black label tayo, iba na, big time ka na, di ba? And then of course, yung mga OTC medicines, yung over-the-counter, you tend to abuse it. Kapag feeling mo, yun yung makakapagparelax sa satisfaction mo na mas magiging okay ka, feeling mo makakatulog ka ng mas matagal kapag ka dinagdagan mo more than the usual or yung sa prescribed sa'yo na medicines. And then ano pa? Withdrawal from society. This is another indicator. Ito yung medyo nakaka-bother to kasi you tend to isolate yourself. Meron tayong tinatawag na social isolation and ito yung talagang term for social distancing. Actually, gusto ko i-correct kasi yon. Social distancing yung sinasabi sa atin, pero dapat physical distancing yon. Social kasi, kumbaga yung ikaw, na-isolate mo na from your group or kung saan ka belong, ina-isolate mo na yung sarili mo, which is bad. Kasi, importante yung social relationships natin, di ba? Sabi nga nila, no man is an island, di ba? So, biglaan na lang, wini-withdraw mo yung sarili mo sa mga happenings outside of your Discord account, di ba? Ano pa, yung mga family gatherings mo, kahit via Zoom, ayaw mo na. Lalo na kung family reunion, umay na umay ka na sa mga relatives mo. Kung nandun si Tita Marites, na masyadong nanlalait, 'di ba? So that's also a indicator. That's withdrawal from society. Physically and socially distancing 'yon from others. And then the next one, you are being angry out of proportion. Ito yung biglahang merong anger burst. Yung parang feeling mo, nagsabay-sabay lahat ng problems mo, and then merong isang maswerteng nilalang, kinausap ka lang, and then na-disappoint ka, sa kanya mo nabuhos yung galit mo. But yung galit mo is more than the usual. As in, galit na galit ka, you are cursing, you are swearing him or to her, malala ka. That's also an indicator na probably you're not mentally healthy. The next one is hallucinations. Hallucinations, ito yung sa senses natin. It can be auditory, it can be visual, and many more. If you're familiar with The Penthouse, so diba kapapanood ko lang yung The Penthouse K-drama, Korean drama, there's this character na nagkaroon siya ng auditory hallucinations and visual. Na akala niya, lagi siyang tatalunin nung mortal enemy niya. Feeling niya kukunin palagi sa kanya yung trophy, which is hindi nakikita ng ibang tao. So here in hallucinations, meron ka ng problem with your five senses. And the last indicator will be thinking or talking about suicide. So hinuli ko to kasi ito yung red flag sa lahat. Why? Kasi magkakaroon ka na ng suicidal ideation dito. When we have suicidal ideation, iba na yung tinitingnan mo about the life perspective. Ibig sabihin, you tend to void your life existence already. Wala ka nang nakikita para mabuhay ka pa. You don't care anymore kung sino man yung maiiwan mo. So ito kasi, red flag siya kasi pwedeng maging impulsive yung person dito, yung friend mo. Nabiglaan na lang, kunin na lang yung buhay niya. For some reason, dahil clouded na yung utak niya. So again, that's the indicators, that's 9. Madami siya alam ko. Pero I think, yun yung mga most na pwede mag-manifest na makita ninyo sa friends or relatives or sa peers rather ninyo.
It's definitely, I love how ang dami pong pwedeng possibilities na makikita. And I think also for listeners, it's important that we take note of all these concrete signs, because sometimes we can say na my friend is going through this, but it's in general parang hindi natin alam na there are concrete signs of having to see when our friends are going through it, And also, natamaan po ako dun sa Shopee a little bit. uh, those recent purchases in Shopee, but also very very easy to relate to. Definitely for our friends, don't you think, Rafi?
Yeah, actually about that Shopee one, minsan nararamdaman ko naman yung yung high, yung happiness ng pagkabili ko. Pero sometimes, 'di ba, there's shopper's remorse, 'di ba? Pagkabili mo, na ma-realize mo,
Yeah.
ay, hindi ko
Ano tong
pala
ginawa ko?
kailangan. Anong ginawa ko? Ba't ko ito binili? Just to, I really have to comment how you were able to give yung mga examples na sobrang relatable. Yung penthouse, di ko yun alam. Pero I'm pretty sure some of our viewers can relate to watching these K-dramas. And just to give like a more personal experience. Before the pandemic, sobrang social ko, sobrang daldal ko sa mga chat. Tapos parang ngayon, ayoko na kausapin yung mga friends ko. Okay, kailangan ko ng pahinga from my friends. That's the personality shift that I experienced before the pandemic and during the pandemic. What about you, Zandy?
Ako naman, I think resting. I think we're the same. I'm also pretty social naman. But also, I think especially now when we're taking a break, it's important na I give time to myself. I consider my personal space sacred also. So I think I've also had that as well, diba? And we talked about how we'll know if a friend needs social support. So we talked about social support, and we recalibrated how we think, how we see peer support versus social support, and that's such a great thing, ate. But also, I want to know, once we do see these concrete things that our friends are going through, personality changes, highs and lows, what should we say and not say to somebody who's undergoing a lot of mental stress? And what should we do or not do to help them get through whatever they have to go through?
Right, that's a good question. What should we say? Actually, before we try to say to your friends or peers, let's try to ask first before we say. Sometimes, let's check, di pala sometimes, let's normalize. Oh, di ba, we love the term. Let's normalize to ask, what do they need? Do they need a listener or a counselor? Because not everybody needs a counselor. We all have that one friend na kapag binigyan mo ng advice, they think it's an unsolicited advice, which they don't really need at all. And sometimes, people needs only listeners. Why? Because gusto lang nila makagaan yung burden nila. So parang they need a human sponge na merong magsasalo na to absorb yung burden nila kasi it's killing them already. Parang masyado na silang punong-puno yung glass nila. It's failing already, 'di ba? So you should ask first, do they need a listener or counselor? Now, if they answered na listener ang kailangan nila, now, ask yourself, are you a good listener? Do you have that listening skill? And to be exact or to be specific, do you have the active listening skills? Napapaisip kayo kung ano nga ba? Listener naman ako sa school, di ba? Good naman ako sa comprehension. But that's not it. Diba? Of course, bukod sa empathy na kailangan natin ipakita dun sa tao, we should be a good listener. Diba? Actually, mas mahirap to being a counselor, yung makinig ka lang. Lalo na if also nakarelate ka and parang feeling mo na sa same boat kayo, na parang kayong lulubog anytime. But of course, for active listening naman kasi, if ever alam nyo, di ba, na listening is a macro skill. Macro skill na tinuturo sa atin way back, preschool days natin, elementary days. It's the writing, the listening, the speaking, and reading. So, di ba, doon pa lang dapat na-develop na natin. And lalo na dito, application in real life, yung listening skill na to. So dito, dapat, for listening, you should build trust and rapport. what do we mean by rapport? It's RAPPORT. It is building a good connection even though parang ngayon lang kayo ulit nag-reconnect, di ba? Ngayon lang kayo ulit heart-to-heart talk. Like for example, long lost friend mo siya, pero confident mo din siya at the same time. You should build rapport when listening. Yung make your friend comfortable with you telling all nang hindi mo pinipilit, di ba? Parang mag-create ka ng atmosphere that's very a safe space for your friend. And as well, you should demonstrate concern. Concern as well as empathy. And as well, use brief verbal affirmations. When we say verbal affirmations, later on, magbibigay ako ng examples about that. And we don't really just here invalidate feelings kasi importante na ma-validate yon. And of course, be specific in asking questions when your friend asks for a counselor. Yun. So ito naman, for counseling naman, hindi naman to yung parang sa guidance office na, magka-counsel, di ba? May stigma na gano'n, ng weird kapag pinatawag ka sa guidance office. But we have there the root word guide. Your friend will guide you, at least, di ba? So, ingat lang tayo when we try to counsel, we give advices to your friend. We should avoid here toxic positivity because ito right now yung problem ng lahat. Hindi nila alam that they are telling na kaya mo yan, mapagdadaanan mo din yan. Example pala siya ng toxic positivity. Di ba? Yung just be positive, ganyan. So, paano ba nagiging toxic yung positivity mo? Nagiging toxic lang yan when it's overgeneralized as well as excessive na siya. To the point na sobrang positive mo, nai-invalidate mo na yung feelings ng friend mo. So parang nafe-feel na ng friend mo na mali ba itong nararamdaman ko? Na hindi ba siya makaka-relate at all? Bakit gano'n na lang siya? Akala ko ba nasa side niya ako? So parang nai-invalidate yung gusto niyang ipaintindi doon, 'di ba, sa situation. And toxic positivity kasi can lead to gaslighting. So if you're not familiar with gaslighting, this can rob off the people's self-worth. Nawawala na yung parang pagkakakilanlan niya or identity niya just because you are being too positive. 'Di ba? Sobrang positive mo, hindi niya na makilala yung sarili niya. Na dapat ba ito na lang yung gawin ko? Paano na ako? Hindi naman ako ganitong person. Hindi siya applicable for me. Hindi applicable sa personality ko. I think hindi ko siya kaya. Diba? So, let's be too careful on saying such words. And we must be having validation and hope sa mga binibigay nating advices. Validation and hope, big sabihin, yung tone mo doon sa communication mo is you are very warm, you are comforting, as well as you are affirming the emotions, as well as at the end of the day, ang context lang naman ng mga sabihin mo is nandyan ka in these trying times. Diba? In these trying times, alam ko mahirap. Yun yung pag-validate. Alam ko mahirap. Rough times ito. Let's trust the process. And I know, kaya mo yan. Nandito lang ako for you. Those words, di ba, ay magkaiba dun sa sasabihan mo lang na, kaya mo yan, di ba? Napagdaanan mo na yan dati. Iba lang to, ibang karelasyon lang to, mas toxic lang siya. Di ba parang, if you have that validation and hope, di ba, parang bibigyan mo ng security yung tao and comfort na kinakailangan niya. So I think you should have those. Actually, medyo overwhelming siya. I'm sorry for that. Pero I think that will help.
Yeah, since you mentioned nga na medyo overwhelming, I think we can remind our viewers na this is a podcast. You can go back and listen. You can fast forward. You can rewind to what Ate Vey is saying because it's actually very enriching what she's saying. And just to point out, then this podcast isn't just learning about mental health. It's also an English lesson kasi diba natuto natin yung spelling ng rapport, yung different definitions, diba? It's an all-around podcast. But anyway, kidding aside, I must admit na I used to be the type, or I'm sometimes unaware of my own toxic positivity. Kasi diba, you did mention that toxic positivity is very rampant nowadays, especially during the pandemic. But I think it's very important na alam natin na toxic, na may toxic positivity tayong lahat. Or we must be aware of our own problems, because that's the first step to fixing our own problems. Na we should be able to communicate better, that we should realize, we should know na we're being toxic in that way, and we can fix these things. And I also must say din na I like how you had how you had to define yung counseling and yung just listening, because before sobrang mabigay ako ng advice with giving unsolicited advice. Like I would I've my practice now is to ask whether or not they'd want me to give them advice, because sometimes people just want someone to listen to them, diba? People don't always want advice. Sometimes they just need to let out their steam. Sometimes they just need to let out how they're feeling, and that would help make them feel better. That's the kind of social support that they need. And what about you, Sandy? How are you feeling about this kind of social support?
Actually, it's nice because I being feeling validated is something that I think everyone wants to feel. Diba? Parang I'm feeling this way, and no one would want someone to say na wala lang naman yan. So I think it's nice to remember also that when we have some words out of our mouths, it does affect other people and the people around us. And I just want to piggyback also on what Rafi said about counseling. Just a follow-up question lang po on this question. How will we know, how are we able to give good advice, now solicited advice, if we haven't experienced what our friends are experiencing? Like they're experiencing something that, oh, I haven't treaded those waters yet. Should we say na I'm not gonna give you advice yet, or should we just listen to them?
I think the key here is to be honest, 'di ba? If you're being honest to your friends, of course magigets na nila dun yung yung pagiging genuine mo when it comes to concern. And ang pagiging honest naman kasi is free lang naman, 'di ba? You tell to them as much as I want to help you, but I honestly doesn't know how to deal with these things. I think hindi ko pa siya na-experience, and maybe I can help you with other aspects na lang, di ba? So don't feel bad, but at the end of the day, I really want to help you, of course, yun yung sabihin nyo na lang sa friend nyo. Pero hindi ko talaga to relatable, or hindi ko talaga siya alam at all. Kasi baka mamaya magbigay ako ng advice sa'yo sa kagustuhan ko na makahelp. Pero 'di ba, maging worst lang yung nararamdaman.
Yeah, so you've mentioned that, and we've gone through defining what the social support is, and the different kinds of signs that you can identify if someone is going through mental stress. But what I want to know then is if if there's a difference, or I'm sure that our listeners here are aware that there's a difference between mental stress and our friends or peers that have actual mental disorders like depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. And since I mentioned that, how should our kind of differ from the normal uh, social support na giving advice, so on? And how do we differentiate that from giving from the kind of help that they need when they have an actual clinical diagnosis?
Alright, so this is more specific than what I have said earlier. So for our friends that are clinically diagnosed, of course, number one, active listening, of course. That will really help them, as well as you offer them reassurance. Yung bibigay niya lang sila ng statements such as, in this battle that you are battling with, you are fighting, uh, you are experiencing, pwede nyo sabihin that this is very overwhelming for you, but remember that I am here with you in this battle. Even though hindi tayo magkasama, we can just virtually talk, di ba? I'm here with you always. So that's giving reassurance. And then the third one, this is more specific naman, is to help them identify their triggers if hindi pa nila alam. Pero kung alam na nila, you can ask if okay lang kasi not all can tell their triggers kasi it's very sensitive for them to tell, of course. Minsan, nagsasabi pa lang sila ng triggers nila, nagkakaroon na sila ng anxiety attacks. So, you can try to help them identify ano ba yung triggers nila. So, some people kasi, they're good at avoiding it and some people are good with experiencing it. Ang tawag doon flooding. Pina-flood nila yung sarili, na-expose nila, mayroong overexposure para ma-immune sila. Yun kasing ibang coping mechanisms ng ibang tao. So you try to ask kung okay lang. If that's not too sensitive with them, help them identify their triggers. Kasi in mental health, we tend to be preventive rather than curative. So mas maganda na maiwasan mo na ng mas maaga para hindi na magkaroon ng mga signs and symptoms ng mental disorder ng friend mo. And as well, if well-versed ka or may alam ka about grounding techniques, so nakita ko to sa sa Netflix series na It's Okay to Not Be Okay. Nagkaroon doon ng butterfly hug. Ginawa namin yung way back nung college. Seminar workshop kami sa UST, and that's very effective in butterfly hug. And that's one way of grounding. Nga pala, grounding kasi, yung concept ng grounding, di ba, as I have said earlier, kapag you're not mentally healthy or meron kang mental disorder, nawawala ka on your senses. So grounding helps you to get back on your 5 senses. So meron tayong mga different grounding techniques. Pinakasikat dyan yung 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 techniques. Yung 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it's magli-list down ka according to your senses mo ng things. Like for example, 5 things that you can see, maglilista ka on your environment kapag nagkakaroon ka ng anxiety attacks. Then 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. With that, di ba, na-associate mo na I'm getting back to normal with my senses. So that's grounding techniques. And of course, the last one here is know your limits. Of course, you cannot give what you don't have, of course. And if it's beyond your limits na, you try to tell them na, what if, let's go back to your psychologist or to your psychiatrist. Let's give him or her na nagkakaroon ka ng ganitong bagong experiences, which ngayon mo lang din na-experience at all. Yung pag nag-take siya ng medications, feeling hindi siya makahinga. Diba? If hindi mo na talaga kaya ma-handle yung support na gusto mong ibigay, and hindi mo na talaga siya alam at all, of course, let's seek professional help. Go back tayo dun kung sino talaga yung psychologist or psychiatrist niya. And at the end of the day, yun lang din yung makaka-help din sa atin. Kasi teamwork naman to eh. Social support plus professional help, of course, yun ang magandang team up.
Thank you for that, Ate. You know what? Also, it's very nice that we talk about this and being capable of peer support, and the things that we should do, the things that we should be aware of, to be able to assist the people that we're close with. And so I think also a question that would be appropriate to ask regarding not peer support but social support after that recalibration that we've had, because we did talk about, if everybody's capable of providing peer support and how we're supposed to do this. We've also talked about ways as friends, as the social people around the person, and how we're able to assist them through that. I'd also want to ask now, especially in the pandemic, because there's a big gap between people. If a friend is going through a lot of mental stress and they seem to have this distance, this space between us and them, what should we do to still let them know that we're still there for them?
Alright, so balik tayo sa kanina. This is social isolation. So they are trying to push away mga people sa kanila, or they themselves, ayaw na nila mag-join pa dun sa group na kinabibilangan ninyo. So, try to check first on your friend. So, di ba, a simple, kunwari, nag-story siya, nag-heart ka, di ba? That's one way of reminding na nandyan ka. Di ba? This is trying to connect or reconnect to your friend. And then as well, as if your friend, if it's necessary to isolate him or herself. Sometimes, gusto lang nila gawin yun. Hindi naman pala siya ganun kakailangan. Or parang that's a defense mechanism for them. Nag-escape agad sila. Diba? Do you think, ask them na necessary ba to? Or baka naman napahiya ka lang? Or some circumstances nag-trigger lang sa kanya kaya bigla siya nag-isolate? If kaya mong lumapit sa kanya, ask if necessary ba to. Now, kung hindi mo siya matanong, check then your friend if he or she is an introvert or extrovert. Usually, kapag introvert, medyo mahirap na to kasi of course, ang comfort sa kanila is being alone. And if introvert yung friend ninyo, let's all respect that. Why? Because yun talaga siya, yun yung personality niya, introvert talaga siya. Or possible, ambivert yung tao, pero mas dominant yung side niya ng pagiging introvert. Let's all respect that. But, in giving him or her space, di ba, let's have that reminder na pwede mong i-chat or i-text na we can wait for you, di ba? I know that's hard, kaya ka nag-isolate probably, di ba? But pag okay ka na, we are all here for you. Di ba? We can have that helping hand for you. Bigyan mo ulit siya ng reassurance. And pwede kasi yung pag-isolate niya is yun yung coping mechanism niya. So we should be respective of that. And the last one here, we should not always insist ourselves. Kasi possibly, maging annoying tayo dun sa friend natin na they get it na we're concerned for them. Pero, ang nangyayari, kaka-insist mo, so kagustuhan mo lang naman mag-help, is annoying na. I think, once is a good reminder na, once na mag-message ka, mag-chat ka, or twice, pero siguro yung everyday, nakukulitin mo siya, nawawala na yung personal space niya eh. So, kumbaga parang nai-invade mo na rin as well yung privacy niya. And then remember that, pag na-frustrate na kayo sa kaka-help sa friend ninyo, remember that no man is an island, according to John Donne, that every man is a piece of continent, a part of the main. Yun yung lagi kong binibigay when it comes to problems for interrelationships natin. So, kumbaga, for now, pwede mag-isolate siya. Pero at the end of the day, bigyan nyo siya ng reassurance na nandyan palagi kayo for him or for her.
Yeah, thank you, Ate Vey. I like how you threw it back to your quote from John. John Doe ba?
John
Basta,
Doe.
no man is an island, diba? Pero we recognize that no man is an island, but we also have to be very sensitive of our boundaries, especially during the pandemic, because like you said, hindi naman pwede na parati tayong nandyan for our friend because we also have to take care of our own mental health, and we have to be careful of our friends, our peers' mental health, because we shouldn't be overstepping our boundaries. And Zandy, I think we can wrap this one up.
Yes, this has been such an incredible, I think, journey throughout the whole podcast because we also, we've almost come full circle. We've talked about the self, we've talked about others, and now we've talked about how we can put that concept of others into action, right? And dahil nga ang dami nating information na nakuha, dyan natatapos ang ating talakayan hingil sa pagbigay ng angkop na suporta sa isa't isa. Rafi, what was your favorite part? Because I've had a lot. Like, I feel like my brain right now is full of good information that I can take in.
Yeah, my brain tried to absorb all those concepts, and I myself might have to go back through all the things that Atave mentioned, because it was very informative. It was very enlightening. I learned a lot of things today, and I guess one of the things that really struck to me was yung being able to distinguish yung counseling and yung listening, kasi it's very important. Especially now, like I keep on saying, especially now during the pandemic, because we have to be really sensitive about who we're talking to and the way that we communicate with regard to the support that we give our friends, the people that surround us. Because ayun, mahirap nga. It's hard to traverse those lines of being able to speak or being able to give advice, and I'm gonna take all these learnings that I learned today and try to apply it in my life, because it's you can always learn from what we learn from all these people. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that I'll be able to give more I'll be able to give better social support moving forward.
Yes, and at the very also one of the things that I think two words that struck me today are the words reassurance and validation. I think there's so much, those two words can sometimes be used together, but also the process by which we give people reassurance, the process by which we give people the validation that they need is very, very essential. At muli po maraming salamat sa inyo for spending your time with us, for giving us all this information. And also to all our listeners for keeping us in the background. Don't forget that you guys can just re-listen to this podcast again should you have missed anything that you wanna listen to again.
And maraming salamat po sa inyo, Ate A, para sa isang makabuluhang diskusyon hinggil sa pagbibigay ng angkop na suporta sa isa't isa. Bilang pasasalamat sa inyong paglalaan ng oras sa podcast na ito, iginagawad namin sa inyong sertipiko ng pagkilala na ito.
This certificate of recognition is awarded to Ms. Vea Rica Madlangsakay for sharing their invaluable expertise as a resource speaker for Count on Me, providing peer support to those experiencing mental health issues. Episode 3 of the video podcast series entitled Pahinging Pahinga, given this 10th day of April 2021 during the pre-recorded event via Zoom, shined by Sean Rom, Project Head, Russell Coe, External Committee Member, Giles Calmando, and John Palayo, Team Coordinators.
And before we end all of this, we end this thing, before we end our discussion, baka po may gusto pa kayong sabihin, Ate Vey, to our listeners, may gusto pa kayong i-promote para sa'yo or anything?
Aside from that, gusto ko lang of course i-promote yung Youth for Mental Health. So nag-member ako dyan because of my advocacy. If kayo nagsisimula na yung fire na maging advocate kayo, then why not join? Then of course, I have this relatively new org. This is We9 PH. Ako yung advisor dito. And I have this hardworking executives. So nakompleto na kami finally. And of course, we have the same initiative with the Youth for Mental Health. It's just we're relatively new and we're really starting small pa lang. And dito naman, about sa podcast natin, last words ka lang dito is everybody's capable of peer support or social support. Ang key lang dito is you need to be self-aware. Ano ba yung strengths mo, ano yung weaknesses mo, na pwede mong ma-help for your friend. Thank you, Zendi and Rafi.
Thank you so much po. And I loved this whole conversation. I loved how so many people are able to connect with our speaker today, with all of us, and with our friends. So muling maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo sa aming podcast. At doon nagtatapos, ladies and gentlemen, ang episode 3 ng Pahinging Pahinga, isang serye ng mental health video podcast na nagnanais makatulong sa mga nakakaranas ng mental stress ngayong pandemya.
Yes, and don't forget to support Ate Vey's advocacies. And of course, ang episode na ito ay inihahandog ng Power Up Team 6, isang inisyatibo ng Rise for Education, UP Dalaman. And this episode is co-presented by Sinagdiwa Volunteers for Mental Health Awareness, and Changemakers Philippines.
And it was created in cooperation with We9 PH, Alliance of Public Health Advocates, City of Mandaluyong Science High School Supreme Student Government, the Philippine School Dubai Senior High School Student Council, Yugto Philippines, Likas Bayan Organization Incorporated, and Angkla PH.
And of course, we can't forget a special thanks to Aksyon ng Kabataan Organisasyon.
Yes, and if anyone would want to keep up with Rafi and I online, you guys can follow us on our Instagram accounts. Mine is Crisostomato, like the no limitang one.
Yeah, Crisostomo Ibarra. It's
Yeah.
like Crisostomo Ibarra and tomato. So it's combine the two words. And ako naman, you can follow me. You can catch up on my antics on Instagram at riffraffrap. It's like double F. Don't forget.
Yeah, double F with all the letters.
IOA. Yes, you'll check it out.
Yeah, that's actually quite easy to remember. But again, maraming salamat po sa ating speaker for today. Also, don't forget to support her advocacies because definitely an advocacy worth supporting. Muli ako si Zanelle Denise, aka Zandy.
At ako naman si Jose Rafael aka Rafi.
At pinapaalahanan namin kayo na kahit sino ka man, kapag pagod ka na, okay lang humingi ng pahinga.
Kita-kits, see you in the next episode.
See you. Thank you.
Thank you. Maraming salamat.